Welcome back to EDFF. Man, it was a record-breaking week. Week 14 had some insane stat lines. We're going to break down all the games. We're going to try to make sense of it. And we're going to prepare you for the playoffs. Hopefully you made it. As always, we'll start off with the injury updates. Some big injuries this week. Carr, he's got a broken hand, probably. He left the stadium wearing a cast. Not good. Really no good replacement for him. Guerrero, he had a foot injury. He had to come out. Patrick Taylor was next up, and he did well and got a touchdown. So you need to go get him on this week's waiver wire. Homer, he had a head injury. The Chicago backfield is just a train wreck right now. So just avoid it. If you have Swift, I mean, you're going to get 15 touches off of him next week, but that's about it. Robinson, Rams, wide receiver, he had a shoulder injury. He had to leave the game. Irving, he re-injured his back. Now it's White and Tucker. I don't know if Irving's going to come back next week. We hope he will, but White is obviously the premium play between the two leftover running backs. And then O'Connell, he had a leg injury. He left. Ritter came in. He wasn't really a good replacement. I think it's going to impact negatively Bowers and Myers moving forward. All right, let's start off with the early games in the Sunday window. We'll start off with Jacksonville versus Tennessee. Now, this was basically the two pathetic teams going at it. It didn't disappoint in the fact that it was completely disappointing. Mac Jones, Will Levis, these are two quarterbacks you're never going to start. They were horrible in their own right, in their own special way. From a running back perspective, Tony Pollard, he was awesome. 20 carries, over 100 yards. He's looking great. He even had 2 catches. He didn't get the touchdown. That was the bummer there. But, I mean, Tony Pollard in the playoffs, you're going to start him. He's matchup proof. He's going to get 20 touches each game, even though Will Levis is terrible. Ridley, he had 7 receptions for 59. That's pretty good. 12 targets, but no touchdown. Again, Ridley's touchdown dependent, but, you know, from a PPR standpoint, you got like 12.9. So that's pretty good. Akine, that was the bummer. You know, he's crushing it from a touchdown perspective. And unfortunately, 8 touchdowns in the last 8 games finally caught up with him. He didn't have a touchdown, but I will pin it on him because the ball hit him in the hands in the end zone to win the game. Yeah, man, you dropped it. On the other side of the coin, Mac Jones, just awful. 2 interceptions, 220 yards. He couldn't find anyone. He threw it to Brian Thomas, who had 8 for 86, but it was mostly garbage time. It was like, where are you until like the fourth quarter? Really crazy. Brian Thomas, you're going to play him in the playoffs every time. Let me tell you who you're going to be careful playing in the playoffs, and that's ETN. ETN has now turned into the third down running back who catches balls, which is actually really good. He caught 4 for 50 today from a PPR standpoint. That's decent. Added 20 on the ground. Not too bad. But Bigsby, he's the one who got 18 rushes for 55 and a touchdown. So Travis Etienne, he's a PPR guy, but unless he gets a touchdown via reception, it's not good. Parker Washington, he disappeared. I don't really think in the Mac Jones era that he is someone you can play week to week now. I think from this team in the playoffs, all you can play is Brian Thomas Jr. and Bigsby, and then ETN if you're really hurting. Everybody else, just avoid. All right, the next game we're going to look at is the Jets going into Miami. Aaron Rodgers in the sweater vest, dude. I honestly, he surprised me in this one. I really thought he was going to have a rough day. 339 yards, first time over 300 this season, and a touchdown. All right, it was clean, no interceptions. Rushing the ball, though, they were awful. Braylon Allen really showed his problems. 11 rushes for 43. And Isaiah Davis, he actually outplayed him in every single facet of the game. So if you're going to play Braylon Allen moving forward, if Breece Hall doesn't come back, I think Breece Hall will come back next week. But Braylon Allen, he really didn't help out his cause. Isaiah Davis got himself a touchdown. He looked good. If I'm the team, I'm playing Isaiah Davis to see what I've got. Receiving, Garrett Wilson, double-digit targets, went over the century mark. Same thing for Devontae Adams, but Devontae got the touchdown. So in the playoffs, you're going to play both of these guys. Although I think Devontae had a much bigger week than anyone anticipated. Garrett got his normal, 7 to 10 targets, and he crossed the century mark. So moving forward, you're going to play Wilson, you're going to play Adams, you're going to play Breece Hall. Everyone else on this team, I would just avoid. On the flip side, Miami, Tua had a big day, 330 yards and 2 touchdowns. Obviously in the playoffs, you're going to play Tua. A-Chain really couldn't get it done on the ground. I know the Jets defensively against the rush are good, and we talked about that in the preview show, but Devon showing 14 rushes for 24. He did get a touchdown. I will give him that. And he's the guy, obviously you're going to play him all the way through the playoffs. There were a bunch of other guys who added a rush amongst themselves, but he's the guy. Tyreek, wow, he had a big game. 10 receptions, 115 yards, and a touchdown. He's getting more targets, more yards and more touchdown opportunities lately. They seem to be back on the same page like they were last year. So you're going to start Tyreek every week. Jalen had 9 for 99. That's a really solid day. In the playoffs, you're going to start Jalen, obviously. And then Jonnu Smith, huge. Got himself another touchdown. Target share was low, though, only 4. I wouldn't worry about that moving forward. I mean, he still had a touchdown and 44 yards with 3 catches. So he gave you 13 points PPR. That's good. Those are the only guys that you're going to be playing on this team in the playoffs. All right, let's move on to the revenge game. Atlanta going back to Minnesota. Yep, it's Kirk Cousins. It's his reunion. You know, I thought he was going to come in and try to prove himself to his home crowd. I'm not sure that the coaches really wanted to let him do that. He threw for 344 yards, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He looked terrible. They were trying to save him by running the ball. Bijan, big day, touchdown to 92 yards, looked good. Algier, he got a little bit more yards than I anticipated, plus a touchdown. I think they were really trying to cover up for Kirk. He's just not hitting his receivers right now. I don't think Kirk, moving forward, is a guy that you can start in the fantasy playoffs. Mooney, he had a big game, 7 targets, but he hit 140 yards. That's an outlier for him. I mean, he can have those kinds of days, but it's not something you can expect. In the playoffs, you're going to play him if you've got the right matchup. If it's something where the team is going to be behind, high-scoring game, he's the guy you want to play. Drake London, really disappointing. Only 70 yards, 5 catches. You're still going to play him in the playoffs. He's a good to go. Kyle Pitts, 1 catch, 14. Obviously, he is a boomer bust, touchdown dependent kind of guy in the playoffs. You need to watch him. Make sure he's got the right matchup. If he doesn't have the right matchup, you might want to consider somebody else. For Minnesota, Darnold threw for 5 touchdowns. That's a total outlier. Atlanta just could not cover his receivers. I will say that Sam Darnold is looking a little bit better. His receivers, they're just balling out right now. I told you that the number 1 play would be Addison. He was 3 touchdowns, 133 yards. That is someone you're going to start every week of the playoffs. Jefferson, obviously, I don't have to talk about it. You're always going to start JJ. 2 touchdowns, 103 yards. Awesome. TJ, a little bit disappointing, 4 for 45. You're never going to sit him in the playoffs. Aaron Jones, big day. Although I will say, when the game was over, they got him a touchdown. I'm really surprised he got that touchdown. He had a really nice day. He had 15 total touches, which is about right for Aaron Jones. So if you don't have anyone who can give you 15 total touchdowns with a decent shot at a touchdown, you know, you're going to play him every week. All right, let's cover another pathetic game, and that's the Saints and the Giants. I mean, honestly, I thought the Saints were going to kill the Giants. The Giants, they should have won that game. That was just a joke. Derek Carr, obviously getting hurt, really impacted the Saints' ability to win, you know, in the fourth quarter. That's why the Giants kept it close. If Derek Carr doesn't get hurt, yeah, things change. Carr looks like he's done for the season. You're not going to start him. Drop him, get somebody else pronto. If Winston's out there, you need to grab him. That dude is throwing the ball 30, 40 times in the fantasy playoffs. You need to go get him. Kamara, he didn't have a great day. 44 yards on the ground. He did catch 5 for 35, but no touchdowns. And now that Haener is in, or whoever they're going to put in a quarterback, it's going to get ugly. You're going to play Kamara, but be prepared to be disappointed in the playoffs. This is not good. Kendra Miller came in and got the touchdown. He actually carried the ball 10 times. This is a scary thing because if the Saints realize that they're not going to make the playoffs, especially without Carr, they may play Kendra Miller to protect Kamara, and that could hurt you. So if you even sniff that, you need to watch out. Now, I told you Juwan Johnson can't replace Taysom Hill, right? But what did he do? Caught 4 for 50 and a touchdown. Now, can you play him in the playoffs? Absolutely not, because that touchdown came from Carr and Haener. He could not hit the broadside of a barn. So Juwan Johnson, Foster Moreau, MVS, these guys, I think, are unplayable in the playoffs because, like I said, Haener is heinous. Every single skill player on the Saints gets a huge downgrade going into the playoffs. For the Giants, I told you to play Tracy. He got you a touchdown. That's awesome. Neighbors, you're going to play him every week. He caught 5 for 79, so decent PPR day, but every single other player on this team is worthless to start in the fantasy playoffs. If you're even thinking about another guy, go back to the waiver wire. It's terrible. All right, let's talk about the next game. And I'm going to start it off by this. There is someone in the world right now who bet $3 million on Philadelphia to beat Carolina and literally more than likely had a heart attack in the fourth quarter with less than a minute to go. If you watch that game, Xavier Legette dropped a guaranteed touchdown in his hands, nobody in front of him, and it cost Vegas $3 million because this dude ended up winning. I don't know how he did it. NFL, get in there, investigate. This is terrible. I mean, if you saw that pass, it's like, dude, I think my 13-year-old could catch that. That was awful. All right. So Legette, whatever contract you signed, it was way too much money. Bryce Young, everything has been overblown about Bryce Young. Yeah, he can't win big games. He's not good enough, obviously, at his level. He needs some more seasoning, but he looked decent. He kept them in the game, 191 yards and a touchdown. This is not a guy you're starting in the playoffs. Chuba Hubbard, yes, you are starting Chuba in the playoffs. Once again, commanding 26 carries, 92 yards and a touchdown. He is matchup proof. You've got to play him. Thielen, if you don't have Thielen and he's on the waiver wire, you need to grab him. I've been talking about him. I told you he was going to get targeted in this one. 11 targets for 102 yards. Bryce Young has figured out that Thielen is his alpha, and he gave him 50% plus of his total yardage share. And now that Legette is dropping guaranteed touchdowns that will beat Philadelphia, I guarantee you he's going to continue to look at Thielen. Thielen is going to be a PPR monster for you in the playoffs. If he's out there and you didn't take my advice, or he's still on the waiver wire, you need to grab him. Do whatever it takes. It's going to be huge. Everybody else on the team, you can just forget about. On the Eagles side, yeah, you're going to start all the big names on the Eagles. There were some disappointing moments here. Obviously, Devonta Smith got a touchdown. That was great. A.J. Brown, he was ticked off. If you saw the interview, he's like, yeah, it's not my fault. You know, we should be passing the ball more. Saquon, he's the man. But guess what? He didn't get a touchdown. Okay, so that was kind of a bummer. Whatever. You're going to get yours in the playoffs. Jalen Hurts, really bad day throwing the ball. But of course, gets a tush push. Still got 3 touchdowns on the day. So solid game. You're going to play all these guys in the playoffs, obviously. All right, let's talk about the Cleveland rematch against Pittsburgh. It's exactly as we thought it was going to be. Winston had trouble throwing the ball. He did get 2 touchdowns, but 2 more interceptions, only 200 yards passing. That's about exactly what we figured. We also said Jeudy was going to be the number 1 target. He didn't get double-digit targets, but he did get 5 for 64 and a touchdown. So Jeudy moving forward is an auto starter for you. Winston, if you have him and you have like a weaker quarterback like Stroud or Cousins, you need to start Winston every week of the playoffs. He's going to bring you the money. Njoku, he has turned himself into a monster receiver from a target hog share. 7 catches for 42 and a touchdown. He's an auto start every week. Elijah Moore, if you thought maybe, Tillman's out, he's going to get a little bit more timeshare. You would think that, but he only got 4 looks in this game. Not a big production out of him. So Elijah Moore in the playoffs, he's a boomer bust kind of touchdown. If Tillman comes back, he is benchable at that point. Ford, you're not going to get enough carries out of them. Although I will say he had a 50-50 timeshare with Nick Chubb. Neither of them got touchdowns, rushing the ball or receiving. Nick Chubb, unfortunately, it just doesn't look like he's in football shape to get his standard 20 to 25 touches like he used to do pre-injury. So if you're starting Chubb or Ford, you need to temper your expectations in the playoffs. They're both touchdown dependent. Moving over to the Pittsburgh Steelers, they were without Pickens today. That was a big deal. I thought in his absence that guys like Calvin Austin and Freiermuth would get more love. Muth got only 3 targets. He got a touchdown, 48 yards. That was one of Russell Wilson's 2 touchdowns on the day. Najee had a great day. He had 16 carries, 53 and a touchdown. Jaylen Warren was more efficient with his carries, 9 for 47, so he averaged over 5. And then, of course, Jalen got 2 catches for 25. Najee didn't, but Najee got the touchdown. You're going to start Najee. If you're in a PPR league, you're going to start Warren each week, but the touchdown is what you need out of Warren to make him a big play. Freiermuth, he's startable every week. Calvin Austin, he's kind of a situational dependent. Again, you didn't have Pickens, and he only got 4 targets, and you only caught 1 of them. So he is really one of those boomer bust. You can't figure out why he has 2 touchdowns one week, and then the next week he gets 1 catch for 4 yards. So he's going to disappoint you. If you're hoping he's going to take you through the playoffs, you better get lucky when it comes to that. Russell Wilson in the playoffs, it was not a great game. It's not a great matchup for him this week. As he moves on, look at the matchup. If he's at home, he can give you 3 or 4 touchdowns. Really depends who your other second quarterback is going into the playoffs. And oh, by the way, if you don't have a second quarterback going into the playoffs, you better get one. Hopefully, it's Winston. All right, let's talk Raiders going into Tampa. Boy, the Raiders look bad. They're really not playing for anything but the first pick in the overall draft. Aiden O'Connell, he got knocked out. You're never going to play him again. Desmond Ritter, you're not going to start that dude. Sincere McCormick. Sincerely, I think McCormick is the real deal. Sincere, he rushed 15 times for 78 yards. No touchdown on that. He didn't score a touchdown. He caught 2 balls. From a receiver perspective, obviously Bowers is awesome regardless if Ritter's out there or not. You're going to start him every week, but with Ritter, man, Bowers, I don't know. He only caught 3 for 49 today. Not good. They double teamed him, and that's what teams do against the Raiders now. They know who their alpha is. It's Bowers. I don't care if Myers gets 100 yards. Bowers is the most important thing on that team, and everybody realizes it. Mayer, he was the benefactor. He caught 7 for 68 because they're focused on Bowers. Jacoby Myers, he had his standard double-digit targets, caught 7 for 67. That's a guy you're going to start in the playoffs. So the playoffs for the Raiders, the only guys you should really be starting are Bowers and Myers. If you're reaching on one of their running backs, you must be in desperation mode. On the Bucs side, Baker, he had a really nice PPR day. I mean, 295 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. But it looked ugly at times. Cade Otton, he led in yards, but he only had 4 targets. Cade Otton moving forward in the playoffs, it's a risky play there. He's touchdown dependent. Because Evans is back, he's not the alpha anymore like he was crushing it when Evans was out. If Evans goes out, that's a guy you're going to want to play during the week. Even Evans only had 5 targets, catching 4 for 69. Jalen McMillan caught 2 touchdowns off of 7 targets, 4 receptions, and 59 yards. That's a great day for Jalen McMillan. Just realize he's never going to do that again in the fantasy playoffs. This was a complete outlier. This is a guy that I've had on one of my teams for a while, ended up dropping him because he just couldn't perform. He wasn't getting any looks. Yep, he led in targets today, but that is not going to happen over the next couple of weeks. So if you're thinking, hey, I need to go grab this guy and start him, you're going to get disappointed. You heard it here first. From the rushing standpoint, unfortunately, Bucky got hurt again. It's super sad. I mean, Bucky is the talent there. Rachaad White came in and played very well against a weak Raiders defense. 17 rushes for 90 yards and a touchdown. If Bucky can't play, Rachaad White is the play. Sean Tucker, he only got 3 carries. He had a big carry, which is why he had 47 yards on the ground, but he only had 3 carries. So don't get overexcited about him. Rachaad White is the only play. Baker Mayfield, Cade Otton, Mike Evans. These are the guys that you should be playing week to week in the playoffs. All right, let's talk the head scratcher game. And this is Seattle going into Arizona and whooping them. Now, I will tell you, mea culpa here. I told you the Cardinals had a really good defense and they've got a really nice stretch moving forward. Boy, they did not play well today. Geno, he only had 1 touchdown, but they were able to dominate on the ground with Zach Charbonnet. Now, Charbonnet is only playing obviously because Walker is out. If Walker comes back, Charbonnet is not a guy you're going to play in the playoffs. He looked really, really good today. And Njigba, he got his targets, but only 5, but he caught them all for 82 yards and a touchdown. So really nice week out of him. Charbonnet was huge, catching 7 for 59. Boy, if you were a Walker owner and you had Charbonnet as a backup, good on you. If you have Charbonnet this week and he doesn't, or when Walker comes back next week, he's toast. You can hold on to him if Walker is going to have like lingering effects from this injury, but yeah, you can't start him if Walker's in the game. DK Metcalf, really disappointing. You're going to play him in the playoffs, obviously. Njigba, Metcalf, Walker, Geno Smith. I don't really think that Geno, of the 4 names I just mentioned, is somebody you want to play in the playoffs unless you've got, some other option out there. Walker and Charbonnet, when they run the ball, I mean, Geno really doesn't have to expose himself that much. Njigba's a great target. Metcalf's great. Lockett, if you're starting him, man, you're hoping for a touchdown or some kind of weirdness because he has turned into the 3rd, almost like the 4th receiver. He only had 1 target today. For Arizona, Kyler Murray, he was all over the place. He started off great, and then he just looked terrible. He finished with a nice stat line, 259 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. But at times, it just looked like he couldn't find anybody. I told you McBride was going to be the premium play for the entire week. He got 14 targets, but a lot of it was in not garbage time, but a lot of it was in time where, they were behind and struggling. He caught 7 for 70, no touchdowns, so 14 PPR. That's a good day, but I mean, he should have dominated way more than that. Michael Wilson and James Conner, they actually got touchdowns. I was stunned because Conner caught 4 balls for 32 and a touchdown. Usually he's just running the ball. Connor got back to his normal 5 yards a carry. He had 90 yards on the ground. He looked good. He's obviously a start in the playoffs. Kyler Murray, you're going to start in the playoffs. Trey McBride is a no-brainer. Michael Wilson, he only catches a fluke touchdown every once in a while. He is touchdown dependent. That's not a guy you're going to start in the playoffs. Marvin Harrison, he's really not coming through. 4 catches for 49. If you picked him up in the first or second round, this was a bust for you. I mean, a lot of talent, but for some odd reason, Kyler can't find him, and they double team him a lot. So in the playoffs, if you're playing Harrison, you probably should consider that, yeah, while he gets 6 to 8 targets a game, they're not quality targets. He's really touchdown dependent. So if you've got other guys out there who might give you, 12 to 14 PPR, that's the guy you want to play instead of Harrison. All right, let's talk about the game that had absolutely no defense whatsoever. The Bills versus the Rams, 86 points of total offense. What a joke. Josh Allen, everyone's screaming MVP, MVP. You lost, bro. You're not an MVP. And oh, by the way, let's go back to like September when I told everyone that Cook is a good running back, but Allen vultures all his touchdowns. And that's why Cook is not going to be a top 10 running back. He was getting picked in the second round just out of opportunity. But man, Allen is all about plussing up his stats. Today was one of the most selfish performances I've ever seen, calling himself every time on the 1 yard line, not giving any of his skill players touchdowns. That was really weird. I think they lost because he was really thinking of himself. But hey, if you had Josh Allen, you were super happy because he gave you like 60 plus points PPR. So that looked great on the stat line. But Buffalo's loss, man, that doesn't look good on the stat line. James Cook, wow, 6 rushes for 20 yards. Thanks a lot, Allen. And that was it. He caught 2 for 9. But wow, what a bust. If you are playing Cook in the playoffs, you have to hope that Josh Allen doesn't vulture all your touchdowns. Seriously, he should have had at least 1 today. And I know all the Cook owners are like, whoa, if I go into the playoffs and this is my starting running back, I am hosed. And I would agree with that. Shakir, wow, 5 catches for 106 and a touchdown with 8 targets. That's a really nice day. Again, Coleman is out. So when Coleman comes back, Shakir's stat 9 is not going to look like this. Cooper's healthy. He caught 6 for 95. Both of these guys you're going to start in the playoffs. Matt Collins, he had 6 targets. He caught 4 for 57. In the playoffs, if you're facing like a decent matchup and Coleman's out, then you're going to play Matt Collins. But he's really touchdown dependent. You can't really depend on him for more than like 8 to 9 points PPR. So you have to be kind of desperate if you're playing him, especially if Coleman is back. For the Rams, Matthew Stafford, he looked good. 320 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Kyren Williams, obvious start in the playoffs. He had 2 touchdowns today. Yeah, he only averaged 3 yards a carry, but 87 total yards, 29 carries. They're giving him the rock. Everyone who said preseason that Blake Corum was going to, steal his carries, no. Blake Corum, 8 for 34. That's why Kyren Williams is a top 5 running back. Puka Nacua, what a huge day. Yeah, I've seen it all where the holding call on Puka's last touchdown. Well, you know what? They didn't call it. There's nothing I could say about that. 14 targets, 12 receptions for 162 and a touchdown. Cooper Kupp, 92 yards and a touchdown on 8 targets. All these guys, you're going to start in the playoffs. No question. Demarcus Robinson, he got hurt. That's not a guy you're going to start in the playoffs. You're not going to start Corum. So it's the big 4, Stafford, Williams, Nacua, and Kupp every time. All right, looking at another afternoon game, this was a total beatdown. I mean, the Niners just crushed the Bears at home. The Bears looked so ugly. I think they had like 2 yards of offense at one point, and the Niners had like 300. It was really bad. I mean, Caleb Williams actually finished with 2 touchdowns and 134 yards, and he had 27 on the ground. I mean, not a terrible PPR day. I mean, but it looked really bad before he actually got his first touchdown. I was shocked. DeAndre Swift was the only healthy running back after Homer went out. He only carried the ball 14 times for 38 yards. If you're going to start Swift in the playoffs, that's what you have to remember. Rashawn Johnson, if he comes back from concussion, he's going to vulture time from him. Swift is 100% a touchdown-dependent running back. I'm not sure that you can trust him in the playoffs unless you don't have anyone else. Dunze, he caught 2 touchdowns today. That is an outlier. Is he startable in the playoffs? I don't think so. DJ Moore had 8 targets, caught 6 for 49. He is startable in the playoffs. Keenan Allen disappeared today. 5 catches, catching 3 for 30. I think there was a little bit of a key on defense underneath on Keenan Allen because the Niners know Caleb really just likes to dump it off to guys like Keenan Allen, DJ Moore on crossing plays, Odunze on short outs. Caleb just doesn't have a whole lot of talent against a decent defense. And San Francisco got stronger. So for the playoffs, you're not going to start Caleb Williams in the playoffs unless you're desperate. You're not going to start DeAndre Swift unless you're desperate. DJ Moore, I think he's startable. Keenan Allen, he's startable. Odunze, spot starts, but be careful. Although I could say the same thing about Swift, honestly. If you got nobody else, you got nobody else. For the Niners, Purdy, he looked good. 325 yards and 2 touchdowns. No mistakes there. Guerendo, if you picked him up, you were so lucky. Obviously, it depends on the waiver wire and how much fab you had left. He got 2 touchdowns, and then he got a foot injury, and then sayonara. All right. Patrick Taylor came in. This is your number 1 waiver wire. I don't know what Guerendo's foot status is, but Patrick Taylor came in, got 7 carries for 25 and a touchdown. Patrick Taylor becomes the new Guerendo if he doesn't play next week. You got to grab him in the playoffs. He'll probably save you. Kittle was huge. It's obvious now that Purdy is going to Kittle as his number 1 target, which is huge because there's not a whole lot of great tight ends out there right now. And if you're going in the playoffs and you have Kittle, congratulations. 6 for 151. That's a monster game from Kittle. No touchdowns, though. Juwan Jennings caught 2 touchdowns. That's an outlier. But somebody has to catch the touchdowns if it's not Kittle. And it's not Deebo Samuel. If you are starting Deebo Samuel in the playoffs, wow, that's a risky play because Deebo is not getting the targets. He only had 3 today. He gets those weird running plays where they try to get the ball in his hands because he is an elite talent, but he's not getting touchdowns. He's a total touchdown dependent play. He's not getting 8 targets where he's going to catch like 6 for 100. If you're playing him in the playoffs, you must be desperate. Honestly, look for someone who gets 7 to 8 targets and can give you 60 yards with the potential of a touchdown because Deebo, he is just not giving that right now. Jennings, if I had to choose between Jennings and Deebo in the playoffs, I would play Jennings if I only had 1 slot available. All right, in the final game of the evening, the Chiefs snatch victory out of the jaws of defeat and somehow win off doinking a last-second field goal against the Chargers. Chargers played great defense. Chiefs did too. Chiefs came out kind of with their standard. Mahomes, 210 yards and a touchdown. Pacheco, he's RB1 status again. Hunt is now the RB2. He's only handling like 3rd down. So Pacheco is now the starter, and you're going to start him moving into the playoffs. For the receiving, it's Kelsey, it's Worthy, it's Hopkins dominating the targets. Gray is also getting a good target share. Again, the tight ends on this team are the absolute plays every week, including Gray. Worthy, he's touchdown dependent. Hopkins gets all the red zone looks, so you've got to start him every week in the playoffs. They all had decent games, nothing huge. Hopkins getting the only touchdown tonight. On the flip side, the Chargers, Herbert had a rough night, 213 yards and a touchdown. That touchdown going to Quentin Johnston. Quentin Johnston is not a starter in the playoffs, in my opinion. The only reason why he had a decent night and was second in targets is because McConkey was out. When McConkey comes back, that dude's only getting 3 to 4 targets and he drops half of them anyway. Palmer had a big night. That's an outlier when McConkey comes back. Palmer, he goes back to 2 to 3 targets. Disley, he got hurt. There's really no replacement for him. Palmer could get a couple extra targets off of that, but not huge. Again, Palmer's not somebody you're going to start in the playoffs, regardless of the fact that he led everyone in yards tonight. Gus Edwards, yes, he got a touchdown, but he only carried the ball 10 times. And that's all he's really going to see over the next couple of weeks. So if he's the starting running back for the team and you're trying to play him, you are praying for a touchdown. Vidal, he is not startable in the playoffs. Herbert, in my opinion, if McConkey is not out there, he is not startable. He's not going to give you 25 points. And this is the playoffs. You really need a 25-point quarterback going into it. Heck, even Mahomes isn't really going to give you 25 points unless the matchup is good. Just my opinion. All right, that was a Week 14 recap. I know a lot of you were on the bubble trying to make the playoffs. I hope you did. If you didn't, better luck next year. If you're going to the playoffs, think about the things that we talked about. There were some real telling things this week about who to play and who not to play, who's getting the looks, who's hot right now, who's got the momentum going into the playoffs. Even looking at the winning teams, they're really pushing the ball. They're really scoring a lot. So if you have exposure to high-powered offenses, even if it's not, their number one receiver, number two receiver, sometimes that can actually make the difference over, say, a number two receiver on a team that's losing. Looking forward to this week. We're going to talk about some waiver pickups tomorrow night. We're going to look at some possible potential playoff matchups for defenses, something you can hopefully hang your head on. The playoffs are wild. It's winning in, losing done. Good luck to everybody. Now, before we sign off, I want to give a shout out to our men and women in uniform who protect the freedoms we hold dear. Thank you for your service and sacrifice. And finally, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and follow us on X, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts so you can stay up to date on our latest content. And until then, remember, established dominance isn't just a catchphrase, it's a commitment. Are you ready?